You represent the 1/3, the elite, the select, the chosen few, the very best society has produced as of yet. You are the vanguard combating the idiocy that undermines the masses. You are the garrison, the bastion, the exalted of a lost generation. You are also the first and last line of defense for a new generation, the next generation of which you will be its primary influencers. You are the standard bearers of intelligentsia. If you have made it this far, it is because you have made the ultimate sacrifice to restore the vision of a blind and dying society, meaning you have cut through a great deal of chaff to meet me here, where I, Cerulean Gray, am now conscripting you. Welcome to Fort Gray. Consider yourselves now operatives of the Gray regime. 2/3 policy is in effect. Hoorah! Welcome back, operatives. Today is your intelligent communications briefing for advanced communications etiquette, which encompasses communication strategies in a politically correct, hostile, anti-black environment. The topic, black devaluation. This video is specifically designed for male operatives, as organization first begins with the proper organization of men. However, this video is universal to both sexes. Let us begin. Marcus Mosiah Garvey said it best. If we as a people realize the greatness from which we came, we would be less likely to disrespect each other. And we disrespect ourselves to a great degree by doing this to one another. It is the one thing we have done to one another ad nauseum, and it has been the single greatest dysfunction in the Negro community in America and in the world, especially in nations who have been encroached upon by Western imperialism and colonialism. It is why the Hutus and the Tutsis don't get along. It is why the lighter-skinned East Africans don't get along with the darker-skinned West Africans. It is the entire reason why colorism exists. And it is also the reason why once Nigerians and other foreign national Africans land on American soil, they take on the attitude, the posture, and disposition of the dominant society. It is because, much like us, the American Negro, they have internalized black self-devaluation. We'll get to that. But first, disclaimer. If at any point in time over the course of this video you don't like the direction it is going, please help yourself to a free fuck-all buffet. Especially if you are colorblind, an interracial dater, swirler, rugged individual, coon, bedbug, bedwitch, Negro mockingbird who parrots white supremacist talking points, or a flying monkey of Oz. All conditions that make you derelict in your masculinity. This video will likely cause you to have some feelings of discomfort, shame, denial, or self-loathing, likely from realizing just how much of a chump you have been. So click off now to prevent any further damage to your fragile ego and or emotional state. Or just stay and shut the fuck up long enough to learn something that no mainstream educator will ever disclose to you, because they're all horrified in fear of losing their jobs and their tenure. And they hate your fucking guts anyway, so lying to you has become an American pastime. What is devaluation? The reduction or underestimation of the worth or importance of something. The reduction in official value of currency in relation to other currencies, which is typically how devaluation is applied. This can also be applied to the cost of labor, the deliberate reduction of the median estimated value of goods, services, and labor. And in contemporary expression, the deliberate reduction of historical, economic, political, political or social significance, not only of currency, but of events, causality, circumstances, and even people. And when it comes to the American Negro, the only lesson of history we have learned thus far is how to devalue ourselves. Black devaluation has a cycle. First, it begins with the alienation of a specific population within society, specifically the poor, working poor, and other disadvantaged groups. I will not mention race at this point. This is done through economic destabilization. Because you live in a capitalist society, this is very easy to do through privatization, which gives private corporations the ability to discriminate and lock targeted groups out of the industries and markets that upcoming entrepreneurs want to share in the capitalist streams of revenue that they have monopolized. And those existing capitalists who currently dominate and monopolize the market by the political influence in order to convince the state to eliminate their competition while using public funds, i.e. taxpayer money, to prop up their industry. In the words of venture capitalist Nick Hanauer, that's not capitalism at all, but it is socialism for the rich. Second is through subversion, which is the process by which these very same private corporations and the government, or in collusion with the government, convince the general populace to go along with the status quo. This is done by two primary ways. First, to convince the masses that the current system of unchecked corruption and alienation is right and just, and that one day they too, if they work hard enough in this current system, that they'll somehow become rich and wealthy. And this message of plastic meritocracy is promoted and transmitted through propaganda. Then to identify high-value targets within the population most disadvantaged and co-opt them. In other words, pay them and see at what price can their dignity and fealty for the status quo be purchased. Once bought and paid for, and this is number 3, they perpetuate the status quo. How, you ask? By telling you the only reason you are disadvantaged is because you aren't working hard enough to become rich. Granted, in a capitalist society, it is exploitative nature demands there be a permanent underclass. And due to racism and racism alone, we as black people are that permanent underclass. Third is through absorption of these sentiments. Yes, you are the biggest part of this equation because none of the previously aforementioned even matters unless you absorb it as a factual reality. And by what you see, what we see in American society, most of you, well, at least 2/3, have not only absorbed this line of complete, unadulterated, grade A USDA choice sirloin bullshit, but you eat, sleep, shit, breathe, and currently live by it. Yes, you hate yourself. You hate anyone that looks like you. You hate how they look. You hate how they communicate. You hate how they smell. You hate how they behave. And so far, by these very statements, symbolizes that the one common equation or the one common denominator is you. Yes, these are all you problems, not them. Fourth, and what do you do with this internalized hatred of yourself? You project it onto others, but not just anyone, but members of your own group. One is because you are petrified in fear of the dominant society, or falling out of favor with the dominant society, or afraid of how you may look to the dominant society because of the people that you hate who look like you behave. You do this in many ways. One thing the Negro, for the most part, lacks the capacity to do is shut the fuck up, especially in mixed company. The Negro doesn't even recognize when he throws himself under the fucking bus. In fact, after he's thrown himself under the bus, he gets up, he runs back to the front of the bus to throw himself right back under the fucking tire. Therefore, he repeats weaponized dog whistles he learned from mainstream media. You know the kind, such as single black mothers have destroyed the community. Shut the fuck up. The only way this claim can be true is if you are giving an open admission to the world that while the community has been declining, that you, this entire fucking time, have been doing nothing. And because you don't understand how dog whistles really work, you fail to understand that when you repeat this race-driven code speak as a black man, you are actually devaluating yourself. Oh, you don't believe me? Well, I'm glad, because let me explain. That is how this particular line of logic works. It makes it hard for you to understand how you devalue yourself. The implication is, if single mothers are the problem, and it is a universally understood truth that men upkeep the standard by which their women follow, then the lack of standards and responsibility is attributed to the black man's lack of standards and responsibility, therefore implying that neither do you have any standards whatsoever, but you are also lacking in the capability to be responsible. Why? Because then it becomes a question of how did black women become single mothers? That's why, you fucking asshat. You don't think a magical fucking stork brought those children from an otherworldly dimension and dropped them off on their fucking doorsteps, now do you? Or do you? Are you really that fucking stupid? It implies that you lack the capability to rule over yourself as a group of men, and therefore you deserve to be relegated to the status of a boy, and you wonder why they call you boy. You say nonsensical cliches that are tantamount to indecipherable gibberish, babbling, and the foolish jibber jabber, such as black women are poor stewards of children. Well, women have bad attitudes. Black women this and black women that. Black women didn't give me a pony when I was in high school. Shut the fuck up. The implication is that you as a man lack the capacity to lead. This nonsense only corroborates the mainstream media trope that black men are predominantly absentee. Children rarely appreciate their parents' sacrifice until they become parents themselves. That is, unless you are a parent that has never sacrificed for your children, and you don't even understand that this simple line of logic always leads back to you, black man, while you throw your women under the fucking bus for something you ought to be taking responsibility for. Then you wonder why so-called black on black violence happened, and it is because they grew up with the irresponsible parents who, instead of sacrificing for their children, decided to chase their second childhood or a wet pussy. And through your lack of leadership is this all blamed, which is what this is all about, right? Who's more to blame? This is the fifth and final stage, at which point cultural inversion happens. Cultural inversion is the result of the previously aforementioned stages, in which you as a group of people point fingers at other members of your own group and fight back and forth, infighting over and over about who has the burden of bearing the most blame. At this stage, the culprit responsible for your dilemma can step out of the way because you do not have the foresight to see who your true enemy is. That's right, because you don't see anyone named policy. You don't see anyone in society named racism. And you certainly don't see anyone going by the name of institutional or systemic walking around, do you? No, because to you, these are all abstract ideas far out of reach of your vision, which is what this is all about. You having vision or lack thereof. Therefore, to you, none of those things exist. Why? Well, mostly because you're fucking stupid. Going even further, you say such ridiculous drivel as, we're going to end the welfare state. Shut the fuck up. Despite private corporations are the biggest beneficiaries of the welfare state, not the people who pay taxes into that very welfare state that corporations benefit from. Or you say completely idiotic nonsense, such as, we need small government. I don't think you realize how fucking stupid you sound. Most black people that are in the so-called middle class are government employees, not private sector salary earners. To say you want a small government, you are advocating for black unemployment, you bloody idiot. Now sit the fuck down, cross your legs while facing the fucking wall, because you're on timeout, Junior, you overbearing sufferer of antisocial douches disease, not another peep. Michael C. Dawson, professor of political science and the director of the Center for Study of Race, Politics, and Culture at the University of Chicago. The economic devastation within the black community has been even further exacerbated by the economic crisis. This crisis has been at the level of a full economic depression within the black community. The disturbingly high black unemployment rate provides a useful indicator of the degree of economic distress found within the country's black communities. This piece was submitted 2012 to the New York Times. Walter Russell Mead, professor of foreign affairs and humanities at the Bard College and editor-at-large of the American Interest magazine, submitted this in 2011 to the New York Times. Changes in public sector employment could devastate black middle class. The public sector is leading employers of black men and the second largest employer of black women. By percentage-wise, that seems like a big number. However, you have to remember, black women outnumber us nearly 3.5 to 1. And so, yes, we are outnumbered in politics, even when percentage-wise, we have a greater percentage. About 20% of all employed blacks work in government. Therefore, when you advocate for small government and cuts, you are actually advocating for black unemployment, and you are taking away any doubt that you are a short-sighted ignoramus. I know why you do this, because you think if we advocate for cuts, black women will have no choice but to submit down into us and suck our dicks. Fuck that. However, they can make cuts all they want, and they have been making cuts since the Clinton administration, and black women still haven't bowed down and sucked your dicks yet. And it's not because they are unruly or disobedient or have bad attitudes, but simply because you're a fucking loser. Furthermore, you are doing what white supremacists want you to do, and you're doing it on autopilot, and you're doing it with no pay. White supremacists are rather the real ones who run the multinational corporations that lock you out of industry, want nothing more than to have a dumb, cooperative, complicit, feeble-minded Negro that they can further exploit, similar to a Jim Crow era style employment dynamic. And what do you think that is going to mean for black-owned business? If those businesses have no patronage, they're as good as unemployed themselves. Black unemployment means no patronage to black business, which means the death of black business as you know it. And that's even within this gig economy, which is why flying monkeys should simply keep their mouths closed, because the more they talk, the more they remove all doubt. You say other such trifles of your disgusting, unbrushed gullets, such as, I don't hire black men with baby mamas because I don't pay bitches. Well, newsflash, asshat. If you are a taxpayer, you pay bitches by default. But the reason you say this is because you have purchased a lifetime subscription to Black DEVALUATION magazine, a monthly magazine that reinforces that black people, including the subscriber, are nothing but worthless, ain't shit, inadequate, lazy, detestable, and immoral creatures incapable of managing anything even within his own sphere of influence. And you think a black man with multiple baby mamas makes you look bad to your white benefactors, when in actuality they love it when you violate federal EEOC policy against your own demographic, because it makes you an easy and convenient scapegoat and fall guy for real EEOC abuses. Now, what are the results of the black devaluation cycle that leads to cultural inversion? Haven't I told you we are all mentally ill and to some extent display traits of narcissism? After all, we are products manufactured in the biggest, baddest, greatest narcissist manufacturing plant called the United States of a fucking America. The gleaming trademark of narcissism is to demoralize, demonize, debase, denigrate, and devalue their victim. And because you are a fucking flying monkey, which is nothing but an inverted narcissist, you have internalized the devaluation of yourself. Yes, Yes, it's the flying monkey syndrome all over again. The greater narcissist theory. To be closer to the bully, the flying monkey will up the ante on how far they are willing to go to impose abuse on their victim so that they can be valued more by the bully, to be more appealing to whites. In other words, white society being the bully. How other black people talk in what you refer to as the King's English, despite none of you have ever fucking heard the last King of England speak to know that nobody in America or even the current UK speaks the King's fucking English. How black people behave because you think it makes you look bad to your white counterparts at work, at school, in the office, in the boardroom, when you don't measure the dominant society by the same fucking metric and you don't apply the same method, mostly because you are a gutless and nutless, spineless flying monkey who's derelict in your masculinity, and because you refuse to unfuck your masculinity, you blame the fairer sex for your own shortcomings and inadequacies. Why? Because just like the black devaluation cycle, narcissism also has its cycle. Yes, narcissism, it has a cycle. First, they idealize, then they devalue, and then they eventually discard their victim. First, they idealize their victims by holding to impossible standards, expecting nothing less than perfection. Then when their victim falls into or fails to live up to the standard that they have set, they begin to devalue them. The devaluation process gives the narcissist the excuse for why they abuse their victims. And when the abuse is no longer effective, they discard their victims like the trash that they treated them as. The narcissist first has an almost bigger than reality perception of their victim, a messiah type view, one that in the back of their mind they know is impossible because it just gives them an excuse to devalue them. The Negroes who make such blanketed statements about women, as I have previously aforementioned, especially with black women, simply do not understand female nature. Their expectations are unrealistic, fantastical, and lacking context. One could only make such statements if they are holding women to an excessively reasonable standard. And as I said before, black women cannot destroy shit unless you are giving an open admission that you, as a black man, are doing nothing. You see how that works? You've been shooting your fucking self in the foot with white supremacist talking points. But I know what it is. You're scared of the state. You're scared to take this into a political arena. And some of you might ask, why am I attributing all of this to men? Because you make the standard, dumbass. You create the narrative, dumbass. Therefore, progress begins with you, black man. Women are inseparably tied to environment. They are designed to nest within the very environment that they consume and depend on, as it facilitates the success of the second prime directive, i.e. reproduction, which is wholly a woman's responsibility. The question now becomes, well, how do we fix this? In the words of my esteemed brethren, Yusha Thomas, I'm glad you asked, Pry. The most effective way to fix this, which is the way which takes the longest, as it is a multi-generational process, and that is to take control of industries and markets your women patronize and consume. Let's bring it back to business and basics. All humans require 5 basic necessities, really 6, but we'll stick with the 5 basic necessities for life in America. For black people, it's 6, and that is food, shelter, clothing, education, and employment. And for black people, it is also security. You're complaining about how your women act and behave. Well, let's put this into perspective, shall we, Pry? If black women have to go to white society for food, has to go to white society for shelter, has to go to white society for clothing, has to go to white society for education, has to go to white society for employment, has to go to white society for security. Someone with a brain, tell me, why are you blaming her? The more you continue this blame game of cultural inversion, it makes you derelict in your masculinity. Please tell me, if you have a brain, how are you relevant? How are you respect worthy? And you don't control a single industry that women, your women, depend on. She can't go to you for a job. She can't go to you to eat. She can't go to you to rent an apartment. She can't go to you to get a degree. And she has to depend on white institutions, white retail retail stores to buy her fucking clothes. And yet you telling me that you are fucking owed something that you have not deserved. Please tell me somebody with a fucking brain. And instead, when a man tells you this is what you need to do, all of these things can be obtained through the brotherhood, but it takes the cooperation of black men to do it. That means pooling your goddamn resources, your sweat equity, your finances, your intellect, your talent, your willingness to work, your determination and drive must be combined. In the previous briefing, you heard me mention this. Silence and secrecy is a great and powerful weapon to a disadvantaged group, and it is. That is because the less your enemy knows about you, the less weaknesses your enemy has to exploit. And when it comes to social media, well, let's just say if slavery was the worst thing to happen to the Negro, well, I assert that social media is a very close contending second. Yet you can't wait to put your business on social media. You can't wait to out each other on social media. You can't wait to disrespect each other on social media. You can't wait to dox each other on social media. You can't wait to debase, denigrate, and devalue each other on social media. And that is because for the most part, you are irresponsible and you do not know how to erect a fifth fucking column from a fourth estate. But the fourth estate and the fifth column is another video. However, just simply shutting the fuck up about your own people and their dysfunction, making them an exploitable population, will give you some breathing room while you create a new narrative. Because in order for you to create a new narrative, you must first remove the old narrative. And your sole goal for creating this new narrative is by burying the old narrative. And what is this new narrative? Well, once upon a time, the most pertinent and valuable advice anyone could give someone, say an elder to a youngster, is if you don't have anything nice to say, then simply don't say anything at all. In other words, if you are incapable of saying anything positive, then shut the fuck up. For those of you too damn stupid to know what this phrase implies, then let me educate you. This phrase, whether you know it or not, whether your parents or elders knew it or not, were giving you the keys to code. And code is tactical communications. Have you ever wondered why, despite criminal activity only being exercised by a fraction of the overall black population, it seems to be the overwhelming majority of your conversation? Well, that's because mainstream media is propaganda, and its primary focus is to program you into thinking a certain way. If you believe that bullshit about black on black violence, then let me ask you, can you also balance a fucking butter biscuit on your nose? But it's meant to program you into a certain way of thinking. You know, the kind of way that benefits the status quo, to think in defense of white racist pathology. And mainstream media works on ratings, so putting up dramatic stories entices viewership. However, they've made one hell of an echo chamber in the black social media atmosphere. You focus the majority of your conversation on drama, sex, and dysfunction. Criminals are extremely low fraction of the black population. Single mother, a fraction of the population. Yet you spend the majority of your fucking time and effort focused on these two items almost exclusively. Yet you want to change the narrative, right? Well, first, it begins with you stopping all of the bullshit. Yes, that's right. It starts with you refusing to be an echo chamber for mainstream media. Secondly, you can start highlighting more positive stories from the black diaspora. And if you must have drama, then highlight the dysfunction of white society. I mean, really, it's not that hard. You look at what our esteemed brethren Torian Rain has done. He highlights positive stories within black America, and if there is to be drama, then it is that is produced by whites or perpetrated by whites. This is about programming. Highlight the dysfunction of white society while highlighting the positivity that goes on in your own culture and community. Notice in the mainstream media, whites always paint themselves as the good guys, no matter how pathologically dysfunctional they are. White-controlled mainstream media always makes concessions to go out of its way to highlight positive images in white society while using you, black man, as the tragic drama piece. This method has created a false perception of one in which you are the most violent, you are the most savage, you are the most dysfunctional group of men that the world has ever seen. seen. And this is nonsensical bullshit. And has even the Negro convinced of this completely unadulterated bullshit. You wanna know why you're the laughing stock of the world, black man? It is because the world actually sees the parlor trick that you're falling for. And you wonder why they call you a kata. You wonder why they call you boy. Well, you've given a hell of a lot of reasons to do so. Another way you can change the narrative is through a technique that I call help hunting. Yes, once a week, go out into your community and look for black people in your locale that require your help. Fixing a flat tire, pulling over when you see a car with its hazards on, seeing someone at the local bus stop that needs a ride, stopping for someone that needs a jump or other car assistance. Just pull over and ask them if they need any help or need a ride. You want the respect and admiration and to be beloved of your community, do you not? Well, the best way to do that is by being a help hunter. You may think this is insignificant, but it is not. It is very significant, and it displays initiative. Most of my time as a community volunteer is spent doing this, and I still do this at least once a month or more. Winning the hearts and minds begins with small acts of courtesy and generosity, just to show your common brethren and sisters that you care about them as people, because you know how you're treated in this world is less than human. Also, if you're a part of an organization while help hunting, this is the perfect time to pass on some information about your organization. And when it comes time for support, a person you have helped is more likely to support your organization. This is a proactive approach to changing the narrative through your actions, because actions do speak louder than words. The best part of this micro tactic is that you don't have to wait for anyone to give you permission. You don't have to wait for anyone to give you a permit. You don't have to wait for anyone to give you a degree. You don't have to wait for anyone to give you a license. And another way to change the narrative is through the way you communicate, which is what this briefing is about: intelligent communications. Some of you who have listened to me or know me directly have heard me when I speak to my peers. I greet my peers with esteem. I generally say, "Greetings, esteemed, name goes here." I know some of you wonder, why do I do this? Well, there is a few reasons. One is because it is my communicative color. Two, I'm neuro-linguistically programming you, as I know that kind words do have an effect on your biology. When I say these words, your biology responds by giving you a shot of a combined concoction of dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, a cocktail of neurotransmitters that regulate your mood, gives you a slight tingling of arousal, and makes you more receptive to learning. Language is one of the cornerstones of culture, and greeting each other with esteem and kindness is our language. Why? Because we are the gray regime. As you can see, these are very basic and practical things that cost you nothing whatsoever but your effort. With these basic and fundamental practices, can we reverse the cycle of black devaluation and ascend from this downward spiral of self-degradation? However, if you still want to complain about the behavior of black women and their behavior after hearing this message, then it is because you are derelict in your masculinity, and you need to seriously unfuck your masculinity effective immediately. And this concludes your intelligent communications briefing. Now it's time for roll call. Today, the Gray Regime honors Black Zeus 92, who has just taken the Paladin's Pledge. For your spirit of cooperation, generosity, and initiative, we award you the Shield of Loyalty, Fides es Familia, loyalty and family, the values that encompass duty. It is what keeps a soldier in every home. Hoorah! In the meantime, stand by for further instructions. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and be great. Salute to the nation. Cerulean Gray over and out.